When I was a teenager, growing up in India, I had a few school friends over one day. 3 girls. 2 of them were urban Indian bourgeoisie like me, and the other was not. She had less Western influence in her upbringing. When I say Western influence, from the Indian context, I mean adept usage of the English language. Having a wardrobe similar to that of a teenager in the US or in Europe. And having a command over European social manners, among other things. So when my mother served us dinner that night, when the rest of us started using our spoons and knives and forks, this friend of mine struggled like she was holding them for the very first time. The other 2 girls started giggling at her unabashedly at her supposed incompetence, while I was just awkward. After a few minutes, I decided to keep my cutlery down, and I started eating with my hands, as is the Indian custom. My friend followed suit. The giggles on the other end stopped. I didn't quite understand what happened back then. All I knew was that I was not going to make a friend feel less of herself at my house. It is only now, after almost 2 decades, that I realize what happened. The 2 urban Indian girls were thinking of Western table etiquette as some kind of competence, a better, superior way to eat than the Indian way in India. You see, this is a direct threat to cultural diversity. For what is culture? All the mundane things that we do on a day-to-day basis have cultural expression. From the language we speak, the accent we have, the food we eat, how we eat it, even our interpersonal manners. So when society deems one culture as superior to another, we tend to abandon the latter. Culture can be easily abandoned. Just stop practicing it. That is why cultural diversity is so volatile compared to other kinds of diversities. It is very difficult to preserve. A culture lives only when people of that culture bring elements of that culture into practice every single day. Like I try to wear the sari when I practice my Indian culture. I wear the bindi on my forehead. I try to eat with my hands. I follow the principles of my Indian religion, no matter where in the world I am. When people stop doing that, that's when their culture starts dying. Everybody may start assimilating towards a more dominant, more popular culture till everyone starts becoming like each other. The same clothes, the same food, the same language, and so the same thoughts. Such cultural monotony is the death of cultural diversity. The death of diversity is the death of new ideas, the death of creativity, and the death of innovative problem solving. I moved to America 5 years ago. I spent the first 25 years of my life in my home country, India. And in many parts of India, the more elite a business or an organization, the more Western it will be in its architecture, language, interpersonal dynamic, and even dress code. If you walk into a fancy Indian restaurant and speak the native language, you will more often than not get eye rolls. If you wear the authentic native attire with no Western appropriation, there is a good chance you will be made to feel like you don't belong there. Unless you look and sound Western enough, you cannot comfortably avail luxury in India. Now, who is responsible for this? It's the history of British colonization. For over 2 centuries, the British colonizers asserted the belief that the British language, etiquette, clothes, etc. was superior to their Indian counterparts. Everything about the British, from their skin color to their lifestyle, was positioned as elite. An artificial aspiration towards the oppressor's culture flourished in the hearts of the oppressed. That is why they stayed as long as they did. And finally, when they left India in 1947, sadly, these beliefs didn't leave. In fact, they have come to become broadly accepted as indicators of competence. In fact, professional and social excellence may mean nothing if you can't speak English, if you don't know how to use forks and knives and spoons, and you need to be able to carry your Western clothes comfortably. The tragedy is that most Indians today don't know that they are still confusing competence with a culture. So much so that they own this belief system and become the unaware propagators of this confusion themselves. Just like the 2 girls who mocked the other girl at my house. You know what the bigger problem here is? What if this teenager who was laughed at vows never to touch food with her hands again? What if she decides never to speak her native language because nobody thinks she's smart unless she speaks in English? That is how a culture dies. One person's choice at a time, triggered by peer pressure. Is it her fault for wanting to be seen as competent? No, we all want that. Is it the fault of the Indian society? Yes, partially. Because even today, the word modern is synonymously used with the word Western. Is Western the only way to be modern? Or progressive or open-minded? It is the fault of crafty colonization that took away the cultural pride of the natives in the colonies, not completely restored to this day, no matter where in the world we live. To get statistical evidence of this colonial hangover, I conducted a survey. More than 80% of the 241 responses were from Indians who grew up in India. Half of them live in India, and the remaining half live in Western countries. And this was the response for the top 3 ways of formal greeting. The Western formal greeting was ranked number 1 by a huge margin in comparison to the Indian counterpart of Namaste. The Western formal attire of the shirt, pants, and blazer was ranked number 1 by an even higher margin compared to its Indian counterpart of the sari and salwar kurta. There was also a clear bias towards Western table etiquette as being the most suitable for formal dinners, implying that when you say formal dinner, it means a Western dinner. When I told my close friends that I was going to do a TEDx talk, the first question from one of them, a very smart, beautiful Indian woman, was this: "Oh my God, what are you going to wear?" And I said, "I'm wearing a sari." And she said, "What? No. You have to wear a button-up shirt, a pencil skirt or pants, and a blazer. Don't you want to look smart and important?" I was tempted. Of course I want to look smart and important. But I had to go against what both of us were brainwashed to believe to be true, to serve the absolute truth. No culture holds the dibs on smart and important. My fellow Indians and members of previously colonized cultures, It's time to embrace our culture wholeheartedly without judgment. Let's not associate parameters of excellence with the Western culture. Culture is a way of living, not a way of accomplishment. Culture is self-expression. How can one be better than the other? Now, I don't want to leave our Western friends out of this. What can you, the Western friend, acquaintance, boss, do to contribute to this solution, to preserve cultural diversity? Let me tell you what you might not want to do. Once at a work meeting, I was scheduled to speak. The meeting was led by an elderly, European origin American gentleman. He and I didn't know each other. The meeting was a Zoom meeting with over 50 people in it. And as I started speaking, 2 lines into my presentation, the gentleman nonchalantly interrupted, saying, "What's that accent? Can someone please translate that for me?" After a few seconds of shock, I stopped and asked everyone in the meeting, "Whoever understands my accent, please raise your hands." And everyone raised their hands. I took a pause, had my moment, and said, "I think I can continue." Accent is a byproduct of language. Language is a part of a person's culture. And if somebody has to change their accent artificially to be more acceptable to their Western boss, friend, or colleague, that person is being made to reject his culture. The last thing to do to somebody who is already distant from their culture, thanks to colonial baggage, is to mock them for the parts of their culture that remain. They might just completely let go of their culture until one day they become just like you. Dear Western brothers and sisters, do not become the unaware guardians of cultural monotony. There is no use of ensuring diversity by the book if there's no freedom to exert that diversity, to express that diversity. Don't stare at us when we wear our cultural attires. Don't be frustrated when you don't understand our accents. We've taught ourselves to understand yours. Don't be repelled by the smell of our foods. Most of them will be Western certified superfoods in the future. Yes, if we all dressed, behaved, and talked the same way, things would be easy. Things would be predictable. But would there be creativity? Breakthroughs, innovations? I don't think so. Staying different is at the core of human progress. And know that someone in a non-Western attire, greeting differently with an uncommon accent, can very well have an idea worth sharing. Namaste.